They called her a nobody, a widow, a foreigner, a beggar. But Ruth's name now echoes through history for one reason. She chose loyalty when logic screamed, abandon ship. Imagine this. Your husband dies, then his brother, then his father. All you're left with is a broken mother-in-law and a choice: return to safety, or follow her into a land that hates you. Ruth chose the impossible, and that decision didn't just feed a starving family, it changed the DNA of destiny. This isn't a story about ancient charity. It's a masterclass in how your darkest sacrifices can become light for generations. So, what's your Ruth moment? The one where loyalty feels like a death sentence, but might just be the key to your legacy? Stay here. You'll see why the most mocked people often hold history's pen. 3 graves, no goodbyes. Moab, 1100 BC. 3 funerals, 3 graves, 3 names etched into Ruth's bones. Mahlon, her husband. Kilion, his brother. Elimelech, their father. Naomi, her mother-in-law, knelt in the dirt, her grief a silent scream. Go back to your family, she begged Ruth. I have nothing left for you. But Ruth's hands shook as she packed Naomi's threadbare cloak. The road to Bethlehem was a death march, bandits, famine, and a people who despised Moabites. Yet Ruth's voice cut the desert wind. Where you go, I go. Your people, my people. Your God, my God. A vow not of obligation, but rebellion against despair. Bethlehem's gates rose like a gavel of judgment. Widows here were pitied. Foreigners, cursed. Ruth tightened her headscarf, her eyes on the barley fields beyond the jeers. Survival wasn't a prayer, it was a war. Naomi, now called Mara, bitterness, pointed to a figure in the distance. Boaz, a relative, our only hope. Ruth's stomach churned. Hope was a myth sold to the naive. Yet that night, as wind clawed at their shack, Naomi gripped her wrists. Tomorrow you'll glean in his fields. Ruth nodded. Gleaning meant scraps, but scraps beat starvation, for now. Dawn came ruthless. Ruth's sandals crunched over stubble as workers tossed barley into carts. She knelt, fingers clawing at fallen stalks. Blisters split her palms, but she hid the pain. A worker spat near her feet. Moabite trash. Ruth froze, her basket half empty. Then a voice boomed, let her glean wherever she wishes. Boaz towered above them, his cloak's scarlet fringe blazing like a banner. I've heard of your loyalty, he said, offering bread. Ruth's throat tightened. Kindness? Here? But as he walked away, she noticed his calloused hands. A landowner who worked, not just ruled. The scarlet thread. That night, Naomi's eyes burned with desperate fire. Boaz's family, he can redeem us, claim Elimelech's land. Ruth's pulse spiked. Redemption? For her? A foreigner? Impossible, unless she gambled on a scandal. Go to the threshing floor, Naomi whispered. Uncover his feet. Lie there. Ruth's breath vanished. In Moab, this meant seduction. In Israel, death. But the barley in her basket rustled. You've survived famine. Now fight for destiny. Midnight approached. The threshing floor reeked of wine and sweat. Boaz slept by his harvest. Ruth crept closer, her heartbeat drowning the crickets. One misstep, stones. One breath, exile. She lifted the corner of his cloak, the scarlet threads brushing her wrist like a promise, and lay down. Minutes stretched into lifetimes, until Boaz jerked awake. Who's there? Ruth swallowed fear. I am Ruth. Spread your cloak over me, for you are a guardian redeemer. Silence. Then Boaz sat up, voice trembling. This kindness, it's greater than your first. The whole town whispers your name, but his face darkened. There's another redeemer closer than I. If he claims his right, I cannot help you. Ruth's hope crumbled. Another man, another rejection. Yet Boaz gripped her hand. Wait. I'll confront him, today. Dawn bled into the sky as Boaz filled her cloak with 6 measures of barley. Don't return to Naomi empty. Ruth ran, the grain's weight a silent vow. Naomi wept as barley spilled onto the floor. "He won't rest," she whispered, and neither would the God scripting this madness. At the city gate, Boaz faced the closer redeemer, a man with ice for blood. "Naomi sells Elimelech's land. Will you buy it?" "I will," the man smirked. "Then marry Ruth," Boaz demanded. The redeemer paled. "A Moabite? That land's cursed." He tore off his sandal. Refusal. Boaz turned to the elders. "I redeem it all." The threshing floor gambit. Midnight's shadows clung to Ruth like a second cloak. The threshing floor exhaled the sour tang of crushed barley and male sweat. Boaz lay asleep, his breaths deep with harvest exhaustion. Ruth's toes grazed the edge of his mat. One step, one risk, one chance. She lowered herself, her body a hair's breadth from his feet. The law demanded purity. Tradition screamed scandal. But Ruth's whisper sliced the dark. "I am Ruth. Spread your cloak over me." Boaz stirred, his eyes widening, not with lust but awe. "You honor me more than any Israelite," he murmured. Yet his next words chilled her. "There's another redeemer." Dawn approached, as Boaz pressed 6 measures of barley into her arms. "Go. Tell Naomi I act today." Ruth sprinted, the grain's weight a counterpoint to her fraying hope. Naomi's hands trembled as barley rained onto clay. "He'll fight for us," she breathed. Ruth nodded, but doubt coiled in her gut. At the city gate, Boaz faced the closer kinsman, a man with a serpent's grin. "Buy Naomi's land? Gladly," he sneered. "Then marry the Moabite," Boaz demanded. The man recoiled. "Cursed blood!" His sandal hit the dust, a refusal. Boaz turned to the elders. "I redeem all." The crowd erupted. Ruth stood statue still, redeemed. No longer Ruth the Moabite, now Ruth, wife of Boaz. But as vows were sworn, she watched Naomi cradle imaginary heir. This was never about me, she realized. The scarlet fringe of Boaz's cloak brushed her wrist, a symbol of lineage, a lineage that would birth kings, and the king of kings. Months later, Naomi's arms finally held flesh. Obed, Ruth's son. A restorer of life. The women sang. Ruth smiled. Loyalty had turned famine into feast, and an outsider's love into eternity's thread. The price of redemption. The city gate buzzed like a hornet's nest. Boaz faced the closer redeemer, a man with a serpent's grin and a purse full of scorn. "Naomi sells Elimelech's land," Boaz declared. "Will you redeem it?" The man's eyes glinted. Gladly. But when Boaz added, "And marry Ruth the Moabite," the crowd gasped. The redeemer's face paled. "Cursed blood!" He spat, tearing off his sandal, a refusal etched in cowardice. Ruth stood statue still. Would Boaz retreat too? Boaz turned to the elders, his voice thunder. "I redeem it all, land, name, and Ruth." The crowd erupted. Ruth's knees buckled. Redeemed, no longer Moabite, now Boaz's wife. But as vows were sworn, Naomi clutched imaginary heir. Ruth's joy faltered. This was never about me, she realized. The scarlet fringe of Boaz's cloak brushed her wrist, a symbol of lineage, a lineage that would birth kings, and the King of Kings. That night, Boaz pressed a bronze bracelet onto Ruth's wrist, a bride's token. "You are my equal," he said. Ruth's tears fell on his calloused hands. Equal? In Moab, widows were ghosts. In Bethlehem, she'd become a compass, pointing the scornful toward grace. But as whispers of Moabite were lingered, Ruth tightened the scarlet cloak. Redemption was hers, but the war for belonging had just begun. From outcast to ancestor. Obed's laughter soon filled the house. Naomi's arms, once heavy with grief, now danced with her grandson. "Tell him the story," Boaz urged Ruth. She sat by the fire, Obed on her lap. Long ago, a woman left everything. Ruth's voice wove tales of Moab's hills, Naomi's tears, and a cloak that became a covenant. Obed's eyes widened. "Am I in the story?" Ruth kissed his head. You are the story. Beyond their walls, Bethlehem buzzed. Ruth the Moabite had become Ruth the Mother, a title even critics whispered with awe. Years blurred. Obed grew, his curls bronzed by sun. Boaz's hair grayed, but his pride never dimmed. One dusk, he clasped Ruth's hand. You changed everything, he said. Ruth smiled. We did. Boaz shook his head. Number loyalty was your weapon. You fought with love and won a nation. That night, Ruth walked the fields alone. The barley swayed, a sea of gold under the moon. She knelt, plucking a stalk. From hunger to harvest, from outsider to ancestor, the God of Israel had penned poetry from her pain. At Boaz's funeral, Ruth stood cloaked in scarlet. The elders nodded as she passed, no longer stares, but reverence. Obed, now a man, placed a scroll in her hands. King David's lineage, he said. Ruth's finger trembled over the names. Boaz, Obed, Jesse, David, and there, etched in ink, her own. Ruth of Moab, mother of kings. The outsider had become the blueprint. Loyalty, once a burden, now crowned her. She closed the scroll. The story wasn't finished, but her chapter had sealed eternity. The cradle of legacy. Ruth's final years were lullabies and legacy. Obed married, his wife's belly rounding with Jesse, David's father. Ruth cradled her grandson, humming Moabite tunes. Sing the story, Jesse begged. Ruth's voice trembled. Once, a woman chose love over fear. Her words painted Naomi's tears, Boaz's cloak, and a God who rewrote rules. Jesse slept, but Ruth's heart raced. This child would shepherd kings. The scarlet thread now wove through his veins. That night, she knelt in prayer. You took my brokenness and built a throne room. The stars blazed approval. Death came softly, a whisper after dawn. Ruth's hands, once chapped from gleaning, lay still on Jesse's cradle. Obed wept. Naomi's voice, though ghostly, seemed to echo. Your people, my people. They buried Ruth beside Boaz, her tombstone carved. Ruth, daughter of loyalty, mother of nations. The scarlet cloak draped her grave, frayed but radiant. Seasons passed. Pilgrims came, touching the stone. A Moabite changed history, they marveled. Ruth's story outlived stone, etched in souls. Centuries later, a babe wailed in Bethlehem. Mary, a descendant of Ruth, cradled Jesus, Savior and King. The scarlet thread had found its climax. A foreigner's love had cradled redemption, and in heaven's ledger, Ruth's name gleamed. Loyalty's architect, outsider turned crownmaker. The woman who dared to believe that love writes history. When loyalty writes history, they labeled her an outsider, but Ruth's name now crowns genealogies of kings. Every time you choose loyalty over convenience, you're not just feeding the hungry, you're feeding destiny. Boaz's scarlet cloak wasn't just fabric, it was a flag. Redemption wears the face of the forgotten. Naomi's empty arms once cradled heir. Now they held Obed, grandson, heir, promise. A restorer of life, the women sang. But Ruth's smile held a secret. Legacy isn't built by blood, but by choices that outlive fear. Your name may never grace a Bible, but your loyalty can still etch eternity. So, will you walk away or write history? Comment loyalty if you've ever stayed when logic said flee. And remember, the world may call you outsider, but heaven keeps a ledger, and your name is already inked in scarlet. Subscribe if you've ever felt like an outsider. Your story matters.